So, cussing. Cussing. Why do people be cussing so much? Well, this has been something that I've thought about for a while, and I'm going to try to be, not to take too long on this because I definitely want to get to Mike Maines. But yeah, so this has especially been prevalent in my brain for the past month or so, a couple of months, I'd say, especially since a few weeks ago. Well, more than a couple months ago. It was actually before I came back on the show because of my computer problems. There was a article put out by newreleasetoday.com called "What the Bleep is Happening to Christian Music," and here, maybe I can just show it to you guys. Hello, hello. Oh, come on. I want to show the screen. Can I not do that? I didn't prepare for this. Oh, there it go. There it goes. That's not what I. My face. Okay, I didn't even have the screen capture. Let's do that. Oh, bear with me, folks. Why is it like that? That's not what I want to do. You know what? We're just gonna forget about it. So yeah, New Release Today came out with this article. What the bleep is happening to Christian music, and pretty much they said some of the recent stuff that's been happening. I'm just gonna go ahead and read this. I find myself perplexed that I'm here. Okay, who's the writer? Who's the author of the? Kevin McNeese. I'm pretty sure he's like the head of New Release Today. But he says in the article, I find myself perplexed that I'm here again writing about the content of what we continue to hear and see in Christian music. I guess it's been a busier month than usual, and some recent developments have ignited new alarms. In the past 2 months, we've had a few glaring examples of how this issue continues to invade what once was sacred place. Derek Webb. Oh, great. That means that Derek Webb is going to watch this video now that his name is mentioned. Derek Webb, a self-professed Christian music agitator, released a video just in time for Pride Month for his controversial LGBTQ plus affirming track, Boys Will Be Girls. In it, he teamed up with Christian musician and drag queen Flamey Grant. Cute. That's what the article says. He recently activated his fan base to prove his relevancy and scored a temporary #1 album and song on iTunes. The music video captured the transition of Webb from his typical white t-shirt and 5 o'clock shadow, the accompanying flame fanning press release read, into a fully bedazzled and blue-wig drag queen. Always one to get ahead of controversy, Derek's team had responses baked in for all the comments they would eventually get. Well, you know what they say, read one doozy of a line, there's no hate like Christian love. Yes, that was actually in a press release for a Christian song. Well, you know, it's not really a Christian song. I mean, yeah, it's confusing because he's marketing the album as a Christian album, but he's not really, yeah, I don't know. Okay, until this month, Capital Christian Music Group, owned by Universal Music, is the largest producer and publisher of Christian music. They have dominated for decades. Their artist roster far exceeds any other label or label group in Christian music, representing such iconic artists as Newsboys, Hillsong United, Chris Tomlin, Jeremy Camp, Toby Mac, and Amy Grant, sorry, the non-drag version. This past week, they emailed out new music from Jesus Culture, We the Kingdom, The Belonging Co., and the new album and video from Dante Bowe. Which this whole Dante Bowe thing, it was old news by the time that I came back to the streaming. But so that last inclusion surprised me because Dante's new album is getting lots of attention for all the wrong reasons. They recently released music video for his vibey summer gospel jam, Wind Me Up. Features dozens of scantily clad women partying it up in sexual pose after pose. It's true. I would not recommend watching that video, actually. It's bad. The lyrics are about desire, companionship, and arguably lust. His album is full of more than the same, in between some great worshipful moments, but it's hard to know what I'm getting into when we're talking about Jesus, nail-scarred hands one moment and giving into sexual desires while dropping bombs multiple times on the bridge in the next. The same major label group saw Judah, talked about Judah's music on the show before, one of its artists release a new single this past week titled Beatitudes, complete with an explicit version and a family version. He drops the phrase, I'm out of F's on verse 2. The clean version of this Christian song changes it to I'm out of Lux. This is new and something I haven't seen. We have a major Christian label pushing sexual and explicit lyrics and videos alongside legacy church worship albums and contemporary Christian artists. Well, that's not confusing at all. So basically, the article goes on to say that new release today does not promote Christian artists or Christian music that have swearing in their music. And even just this week, Judah and the Lion released a couple of songs that have some explicit lyrics in terms of like swearing and such. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm kind of interested in this topic, and I haven't really covered it before. And so I posted on X, formerly known as Twitter. I won't dead name here, even though I kind of just did. And I asked what everyone thought about it. I tagged hashtag CCM Twitter, which, by the way, if you're on X, I'm sorry. If you're on X, you can follow me at I'm Clifford Today. I've been a lot more active on there, especially with the hashtag CCM Twitter community, and just making, trying to be active in that community. So go ahead and follow me there for interesting posts. So I'm going to share a few replies that everyone had when I asked for what everyone's thoughts on Christian art. Well, here's what I said. What are your thoughts on Christian artists or artists who claim to be Christian swearing in their music? Is it a big deal, or should it be frowned upon? Interested in talking about this on my show. So, shout out to Chase Tremaine once again. He's appearing on this show. Chase Tremaine says, not a fan. Christian or not, there are very few instances where I think profanity was the best, most poetic, lyrical way to express whatever the songwriter was going for. And I think it's too common for artists to hide behind honest expression as an excuse for not trying harder. As for CCM specifically, there's a goofy trend lately of artists using hell and damn in kind of cussy ways, except it's okay because those are theological terms. Sure, but too often it just feels like lazy songwriting or a lame attempt to be edgy. But to present the opposing point, I actually think Emery make a fantastic case for cussing in their song. People always ask me if we're going to cuss in an Emery song. It might be worthwhile to discuss those lyrics on air. I forgot. I haven't really looked into the lyrics of that song, so maybe someday we'll talk about it. But thanks, Chase. Also, Clifton J at Clifton J Music says, at best, it's in poor taste. At worst, it's disingenuous. I feel like most times it ends up feeling like an eye-roll attempt at edgelording the CCM space so as to gain notoriety with minimal effort. To intentionally write and perform, it feels like a repudiation of Ephesians 4:29. Ephesians 4:29. I should have prepared. That's the phrase of the day. I should have prepared for this. Welcome to the I'm Clifford Today show. Ephesians 4:29. I probably should know this verse. Oh yes, let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up the one in need and bringing grace to those who listen. All right, thanks, Clifton. Also, we have Daniel. I at block Daniel Coys. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Sometimes it fits, like Mike Knott / Aunt Betty's Ford. Sometimes I don't really know those artists that well, so sometimes it seems laughable, like when Underoath did and then got roasted by the official Wendy's account. Sometimes it seems unnecessary or lazy. Sometimes it captures the emotion. I guess it depends on where it falls. Which, by the way, if you guys don't know what he was referring to with Twitter, Wendy's Twitter and Underoath. So Underoath, they used to be a Christian band, and then they, came out as not Christian. And a great way to do that was to put cussing in their words. And when the Wendy's Twitter account does this fun thing where, like, if you tag them and say roast us, especially with bands, for some reason they like to do this with bands. And so Underoath did that, and they said roast us. And Wendy's responded, "New stuff sounds like my little brother trying to cuss for the first time," which is hilarious. So let's get to a few more responses. Mike Harvat at Mike Harvat on X says, if they bill themselves as a Christian artist, I think cursing is off limits. As much as John Rubin defended it a few years ago, all the S words on his Rubonic album stick out like a sore thumb and were a distraction on the best album of his career. Yes, that is a great album, but yes, I remember being so jarred when he let those S bombs fly. Do a couple more. Caleb the Spy at Caleb the Spy says, cursing doesn't bother me. It never has. I don't think it's a sin. I think artists should do what they want to do with their art. I'm not interested in putting up guidelines for art. I don't think people need to like it either. That is up to the individual to decide. And Reliant Cake at Two Lefts and 7 years ago on X says, I didn't listen to Forgiven by Reliant K for a few years because of Damned, but my opinion has changed too. It's not right and shouldn't be encouraged, but some less profane words are acceptable. F-bones, I think she meant F-bombs. F-bombs are and will never be okay. So there's a whole bunch of other responses. And I appreciate it. I just can't really get to all of them. I just kind of picked the most notable ones, the ones with the most likes. And but I appreciate it. I had some people who were kind of like, why are we still talking about this? As if it's like it's not a big deal, But I think it's worth talking about personally. And I wanted to share my thoughts on it. My well thought out thoughts. No more cuss words. It's inappropriate and violent. If you guys know what I'm talking about, then you win 1,000,000 points. So, what are my thoughts on? Let's get into my opinions on cussing in general and what my thoughts are. And here's the thing: is that I know everyone's not gonna agree with me on this, and I just want to say that that's okay. It's just something that I've been forming my opinion about for a while, and I'm not saying that I'm right or anything. It's just these are my feelings, and if you disagree, that's totally okay. And if you have disagreements, please leave a comment or something, and I'd love to discuss these things. But I guess to get into what I think about Christians cussing in their music, we should get into what my thoughts are on cussing. And I'm sorry if I turn anyone away on these opinions, but my personal opinion on cussing is that here's what I'll say. I don't think it's a sin inherently to say a certain word, to say certain words. Um, I think my opinion is that we as Christians we give too much power to well, not I guess not just Christians, but people in general. We give too much power to single words and like four-letter words. Not to say that there aren't certain words that shouldn't be said. We'll get to that. But I think there are a lot of Christians who think that like if you say a certain word one time, then you've sinned, and I don't necessarily agree with that. Um, we brought up the scripture verse Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome words come out of your mouth, and yeah, I agree with that. But Jesus also said that I don't remember where it's found, but he said, you've heard it said that if you say the word raka, which basically means fool, then you are condemned to the gates of hell. But I say to you that if anyone calls their brother a fool, they are equally as condemned as if you say the other word. And so I think that that's a scripture verse that shows that it's not really about the word, but it's the intent of what you're saying. And so I think that we should keep that in mind. Here's my other thoughts on cussing is that the problem is that Christians are never really consistent. And by the way, people who are upset right now with my opinion, I do have a counterpoint, my own counterpoint to this, and this has become like the struggle that I've had. But I will say first is that Christians in society in general were never really consistent with what is offensive. Like first of all, um, what is offensive is changing all the time, especially like what specific words are offensive. Like if you watch old movies back in the day, you'll see a common joke is that the word swell used to be offensive. Uh, Not really because I don't think because it had any like negative connotations to it. It was just bad language. But back then, people, they're in old videos, they're like telling their children like, don't say that word, don't say swell. Um, Another word that I can think of is, remember when? Do you guys remember when sucks used to be about? I mean, for some people, it still kind of is, but sucks used to be like really bad because it technically has some, sexual connotations to it. By the way, if your kids or don't have your kids in the room, I'm not going to be saying bad words or anything, but like the subject of what I'm talking about might be a little bit too mature for children. But yeah, sucks. Uh, if you say that at church today, you're not going to be like frowned upon by most people. Um, so, and there's also I would say words like pardon my French, but damn and hell that they're slowly becoming less offensive and more accepted by Christians. And so my point is that what is offensive is changing all the time. There's also the fact, well, the S word specifically, shit. Let's talk about that because we're not consistent about that word either, in the sense that um, we can't, as Christians, we can't say the S word, but we can say crap. But even then, some Christians are not okay with saying crap. But we can say poop, we can say garbage, and guess what? All those words mean the same thing. But one or two of those words is just we just can't say that word. So that thing is that's always been confusing to me. And you can argue the F word, the F bomb is probably offhands because like it actually does have some connotations to it that are sexual in nature. I mean, it means to fornicate. Um, but I guess sort of my argument for the F word even is that like people are using the F word, uh, and they're not really meaning to fornicate by it. Um, People use like say frickin' or flippin', but it basically means the same thing that most people mean when they use the F word. So, but the F word again is like one of those words that's probably still not okay to say. Um, so yeah, it's like some of these words that we're not allowed to say. I kind of question like what makes it so offensive, really, except for the fact that, or like the A word, ASS. Um, you can't say that word, but we can say butt or bottom, you know. But guess what? They all mean the same thing. But for some reason, we can't say one of them just because we decided that that's the bad one. So it's all sort of confusing to me. But I've said all that, but I'm going to counterpoint that, counterattack that, and say that, like, while I have had not really much of a problem with swearing around certain people, I'm not trying to be offensive or anything, and it's like around certain people, I've actually been trying to work on it myself. And I don't cuss on this show. I don't swear at all because I want it to be mostly family friendly and also accessible to all people, especially to people who would find that offensive. This is not an alternative kind of Christian alternative kind of podcast. Um, but yeah, I have been working on that because here's the thing that, like, while we may question what is offensive and what is not, the fact of the matter is that it just is offensive to many people. And the Bible talks about being a stumbling block and how there are some things that we may deem as sins that other people won't. And Paul talks about this. I forget exactly where it's found, but just look up Paul talking about stumbling blocks. And he's like, hey, there are things that may seem offensive to you or may not seem offensive to you, but they are offensive to others. It's probably just best to keep those things to yourself, to not do those things around certain people who may be offended by that. And so I think that that's probably the attitude that we should have, is that, like, while we may think that it's okay, it's probably best not to say those things in certain crowds, maybe not be so public about it. And that's kind of my feeling about Christian music, Christian artists who swear. And honestly, I agree with a lot of the takes that people were saying in my Twitter X post, is that, like, oftentimes it's just when Christians do it, especially if they've never done it before and all of a sudden they're doing it, it just comes off as they're trying to be edgy, especially the way that they do it. They all kind of sound like Under Oath. They all sound like our little brother cussing for the first time. And it's just, yeah, it's just weird. And I mean, I guess depending on how they do it, I can't really think of many examples of Christian artists who swore in their music and it sounded natural. Um, I remember John Foreman in his song "Somebody's Baby." I'm pretty sure he says the line "sure as hell," and that was like, oh, that's kind of out of nowhere, but it kind of works. I guess I'm not as offended by when people say hell or damn, but like if they say like the F bomb and such, usually it comes across as very jarring. There might be some examples where, like, okay, it kind of fits there. Because for me, generally, I am not offended by it. I am not offended if a Christian puts a swear word in their song I personally am not offended by it, but sometimes I'm like, was that really necessary? Because I also agree with Chase's argument saying that how like it's like there's a lot of Christian artists who, they try to excuse themselves. They're like, "Oh, it's just it was the only way I've felt how to express myself." And it's like, really? That just seems kind of lazy. Like if you had to rely on a cuss word to express your feelings, you know? It's like I also like how where my hands at. It's like I'm lifting up my audio listeners don't know what's going on, but I'm holding up my logo in my hand. so so yeah, I see all the arguments. Oftentimes it comes across as you're trying too hard to be edgy, or it just seems lazy. So I'm I guess I'm on the fence about it. Is what I'm saying. I'm usually on the fence about a lot of things. Clifford on the fence close. But there if here's the thing is that like when it comes to secular artists, I mostly don't have a problem with it. Maybe it's because I excuse it because they're not Christian. But I can think of a few examples of secular artists that when they cuss, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess sometimes it fits it if I think swearing can like it can add character to what you're saying. In a way, it can be kind of colorful, you know. Like I think of Oliver Anthony. I guess if we're talking about Christians in music, um, my argument would be is that like when he swears in his music, it kind of seems in character because he's this guy from the South, and so it kind of works in that way. But yeah, I don't know. I can see both sides of it. I think my general rule is well, I guess I'll say for me personally, I don't think I'll ever swear in any of my music. Mostly because I have a lot of people in my circles who would be offended by that, and I want my music to be accessible to most people, and also for the argument that I just think that there are better ways of expressing ourselves, better ways other than relying on four-letter words. So I don't want that to be a crutch. I want to be able to express myself the best way that I can without having to be lazy about it. And so that I guess that would be my encouragement to Christian artists is like hey, you may feel like cussing, but like really ask yourself like why? Is this really the only way to express yourself? And I know like King's Kaleidoscope, I remember someone using that example when they were responding to my post. King's Kaleidoscope used I'm pretty sure it was the F bomb, and I remember hearing in an interview where he was like, yeah, that was just the only it was just the only way that I felt that I could express myself. And it's like, really, dude? Really? Mm, you sure? So, I guess that's my opinion. That's my humble opinion. This is not my humble opinion segment. Is that personally, I'm not offended by certain words most of the time. I'm not offended by them, and I don't really think that like if a Christian swears, like I was talking to a friend the other day, and I know that he's a good Christian and that he loves the Lord, and he let a few bombs fly, and I honestly I didn't think any less of him. So I'm personally not offended by swear words, and I don't think that if a Christian lets a swear word fly, that they're any less of a Christian. And if you feel differently about that, that's okay. Leave a comment, and we'll discuss it. But also on the other side, I don't think that Christian artists and really artists just in general should really be relying on that to express themselves. I think that there may be a few exceptions, but generally, I think it should be avoided if you just want to make good art. But at the same time, if you do, then I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you, just disappointed. I mean, and I'm not like new release today. I don't have a problem really promoting artists who swear. I don't even have a problem promoting songs with swear words in them. I will never include those words. Like if I show previews of them, in my humble opinions, I will either censor it or just not include the parts where they swear. But I'll probably give like a warning to be like, hey, there's some language in this song. And I think I have in the past before. There's some language in this song, so just so you know, you've been warned. So let me know you guys' thoughts. Those are my thoughts on swearing. So I hope that made sense.
Hey you. Yeah, you person right there watching this video. Hey, did you know that this was just a little clip from an actual full episode of the show that I do called the I'm Clifford Today Show? Well, now you do. So you should just go and check that full episode out, and hey, while you're at it, you should just go subscribe and check out my whole channel. That's just my advice. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want.